Welcome to Audiobook Lovin, a month-long event celebrating audiobooks, the narrators that perform them, and the authors that write the stories. Audiobook Lovin is hosted by Books-n-Kisses and Viviana, Enchantress of Books. So happy to have as our guest today award-winning narrator Andi Arndt. Welcome to Audiobook Lovin, Andi, and thank you for taking the time to chat with me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been narrating, and how you became a narrator?
I've been narrating since about 2011, give or take. And how I became a narrator is I initially was working in two related fields in both public radio and in theater. And so while I was still teaching, I started to do some classes in various kinds of voiceover, including audiobook narration. And then the narration looked like it was going to be steady enough that I was really only teaching part-time. And anybody who's taught adjunct at a university knows that it's very fulfilling work spiritually.
Yep.
And we'll just leave that right there. So I saw an opportunity to really make a career out of this, and I decided to quit teaching and put my full-time time and energy and resources into pursuing audiobooks. And so here I am.
Cool. So you're narrating full-time. And do you
more than full-time?
Are you doing any other type of voiceover acting or
narrating? Yes. It's sort of legacy clients that I had before I committed to audiobooks full-time. And so I do have some e-learning and corporate clients that will come to me with things that they need me to do, and I'll do those things.
Okay. And since starting, how many books have you recorded, you think?
It's coming up on 300 pretty soon here. Somewhere between 250 and 300. I actually haven't counted recently.
Well, Audible is saying 219, but I'm sure that's because of everything that has yet to be published and other things that equals probably the more than close to 300 versus the 219 that Audible is showing.
Well, 219 for Andi.
Okay.
So now I'm curious to know. Hold on just a second. I'm going to look up the rest of my titles.
48, according to Audible. 48.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, yeah.
Okay. So, yeah.
Closer to between 250 and 300.
Yeah. So, are you do you have a booth at home? So, do you record at home, or do you go to publishing houses to do their stuff over there too?
I have only ever recorded 2 books, not in my home studio.
Wow.
So I'm pretty much of a home studio-based person.
Do you do all the editing and adding and fixing stuff there too? Because I know sometimes.
No.
Okay.
No. I never have done that. From the very first book that I ever did, I hired that out just because I am not good at editing. I'm not fast at editing, and it's a real art in and of itself. So I really am lucky to have a short list of really good people who are just like tip top and make me sound even better.
So when you get a book, how do you go about preparing for it?
Well, it kind of depends if I'm familiar with the author's voice and style and storytelling structure and sense of humor and all those things. Then we have sort of a shorthand, and then what I want to do is, okay, how about this story? What is this story about, and what's unique about these 2 people? If there's nonfiction with a lot of place names and proper names and maybe terminology that I'm not familiar with, that takes longer. If there is a mystery, I have to obviously know who did it and, look at where the breadcrumbs are. And so I don't ruin the surprise by, I don't know, I think there are ways that you have to sort of let things hide in plain sight, almost the way that the author does.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you bury something too obviously, I think there are savvy readers of mysteries who go, uh-oh, that's got to be the person.
Yeah, that tone of voice. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one thing that narrators always talk about is like, oh my gosh, like the person who did it like has every other chapter all the way through the book. They're confessing that they did it. Like, what in the world voice do I give them?
Mm-hmm.
So that's tricky.
Yeah. Speaking of the voices, how do you go about selecting how a character is going to sound in the books?
Well, I was just actually working on a book today that there was like, can I swear?
Yes, you can do it.
All right. So there's like the bitch at work, right?
Right.
And they described the way that this woman was the bitch at work. And it reminded me so much of somebody who worked in the same office I did when I was still in my 20s, who was super territorial about everything, the desk, her boss's time, things people would talk about. She just was very controlling.
Mm-hmm.
And and she also had a really distinctive voice. So she's in this book. It was kind of cathartic, actually.
Yeah. They say that, when you're friends with an author or there's an author around, they're always taking notes about, people's, what they say, their mannerisms and things like that. And you might end up in a book, of them and stuff like that. It could be the same thing from narrators that, you pick and choose people or their highlights of, those that have been in your life to use them for then inspiration or character, tones and voices. So that's kind of cool, kind of scary, kind of cool.
Well, yeah, I mean, I listen to people a lot when I'm kind of out and about, because there are things that people do in real life that if you did that in a book, people would be like, nobody talks like that.
Mm-hmm.
But they really do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people watching can always be fun.
Oh, yeah.
So once you selected the voices and the tones for each of the characters, how do you go about remembering it? Because nowadays the trend seems to be that an author will write a series, even though each book is a standalone within the series, but characters keep popping up. So a side character in book 2 can now become the main character in book 3 or 4. So what's your
Sure.
process in remembering and about how they sounded, or how do they go about that?
It depends, because sometimes an author writes a book and they don't realize that their fans are going to clamor for a book about so and so.
Mm-hmm.
So they wouldn't even have been able to give me a heads up, like, hey, this minor character is going to have her own book in 6 months, because the author doesn't even know that yet. So the most laborious is when I go back to the earlier books audio files, because I have all the books that I've done, stored.
Mm-hmm.
I can go back to those texts, look up that character, go to that chapter, listen through, and be like, oh, that's what I did. That takes a long time, though. So like with Kylie Scott's Dive Bar series, I asked her up front, having been through the stage dive thing and the way that those worked, I was like, hey, do you have an outline of how these books are going to go? And she sent me the whole thing. This person's going to be this character, and this guy behaves like this. And so that way I saved the right voice for the right guy,
Mm-hmm.
so that I didn't, like, Deep in the stage dive series, it's kind of a stereotype of bassists, actually, that they're a little more like mellow, not quite as intense. They're kind of chill, almost like a little like, like it's like they're hanging out, and so I'm glad that I, didn't use that voice for a different guy, because I had that voice left over when I
Mm-hmm.
got to Deep. Yeah. It's really tricky, because
Yeah.
sometimes you've made a choice for a different character, and then you're like, ah, dang, I wish I still had that voice left. But now people recognize that as so and so.
Mm-hmm.
So
Especially when they're shorter series and the couple keeps popping up, or a main character pops up in a different book. They're like, no, that sounds too much like X or Y, and
yeah,
yeah.
yep, yeah. So the other thing I'll do is use a voice memo,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll just do a brain dump after I get done with a book, and just actually talk like everybody, describe everybody, what their drives are, who's quick-witted, who's resentful, who's fearful, whatever, what their sort of base energy state is, and use their voices so that when I have the next book in the series, I can just listen to like 3 minutes of brain dump from the previous book when I was fresh and get right into it.
So you have done, again, Audible saying 219. I'm going to go with that number for now. Books in all different books in all different genres and stuff like that. We tend to be a sucker for accents when it comes down to listening to the voices. Do you have a favorite accent to perform?
I developed a subset of Southern that I just call light Southern lilt. And it's sort of southeastern Southern. It's definitely not, Texas twang Southern. Because Texas isn't really Southern anyway.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not Louisiana, but it's if you could kind of take it around the corner to like Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, up to the Carolinas, like the kind of corner of the Southeast. Sometimes they get criticized as like by Southerners as South in the mouth, which is sort of too general to be any specific spot. But I like the Southern, and I especially like it when an author knows how to write the Southern glissando, as I call it, where a character is feeling sassy and scolding somebody, and they say like, "How come you think you're gonna come over here?" And like they're like sliding down the tones.
Yeah.
And when a phrase like that is written perfectly, it is so much fun. You mean to tell me you came down here to get a chocolate cake? It's like, you just go right down the tones.
Those are some of my favorites lately. When there's that dialect and accent sometimes, and you do it so well. It's when I forget that you're not from the South or have that twang either. So
Yeah, I mean, I live in Virginia, and I'm surrounded by a bunch of different Southern accents in this part of Virginia, which is kind of disorienting sometimes because we'll run across somebody who is from just 40 minutes south of here is Southern. But then this area is kind of like Pennsylvania Dutch. So like my neighbor is this 70-something-year-old guy who's definitely got the local accent. And for like a small shrub, he calls that a boosh.
Boosh. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so when my mower wasn't working a couple of years ago, he was trying to help me fix the mower to get it going. And he said, well, if you can't fix this today, you're going to get yourself a push mower. It took me a second to like,
yeah.
What is he talking? Oh, a push mower.
Yep.
There's a push mower.
Yeah, there's an entire YouTube channel dedicated to Southern sayings, and there are these ladies that they'll do little clips here and there, and it's just a hoot to listen to them. Cause, yeah, it's just a different way of saying something instead of saying "fuck."
Yeah.
Not the smartest tree are and stuff like that. It's just really cool to kind of hear a different way of saying "fuck," even though that's a good way to do it, anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what's the your least or hardest accent to perform?
Well, sadly, until I get some training in it, I have to turn down anything that smacks of Australian. I just cannot. I'm going to Australia later this year, and I'm going to be listening and listening and listening. But I can do 2-3 words at a time, and then I'm done.
Lost. Wow. I would not have thought that would have been the accent. I think a lot of times people think like Scottish or Irish, but Australian would not have been one that I would have thought that you would have had difficulties with. Huh. That's cool.
Yeah, it's hard.
It is hard, yeah. Because the dialect also changes a bit depending on the region of Australia
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, I'm fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by it. But I can't. I just stare. Like, there's a show on Nickelodeon, I think, or one of those kids channels that's from Australia that's about mermaids.
Oh yeah, I know that one.
Yeah, it's like H2O or something.
Yes.
And my daughters used to watch it, and I would just stand there like watching their mouths, like, what are they doing?
All genres that you have performed in, do you have a favorite that you like to narrate for?
Well, besides romance, which romance has to come first because as a genre that has really given me a lot of love. So, there's where my loyalty lies. Um, but I think there's two, I always tell narrators when they're talking to casting people, the temptation is always to say, well, I would do anything. I'll do everything. But that's not really true. Like, you should say what you prefer or what you feel you're especially well matched with, I think. And so I always tell people to come into it with a capital A and a small b and a small c. So, you're like, I mainly do, my bread and butter is capital A. And I also love, small b, small c. So for me, that is contemporary fiction. And because it's very challenging, and I've had some amazing books that I've gotten to do that were contemporary fiction, where there was one that the mother's story went backwards and the daughter's story went forwards as the chapters leapfrogged. So there was a tragedy, and the daughter's chapters are heading toward it, and the mother is reflecting back on it. And they sort of meet at the tragedy structurally. And it was exactly how it's challenging to be a mom, because you already know that that daughter of yours doesn't have the life experience to see around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And how could she, because she's young. And so the daughter goes barreling toward this thing through poor judgment and just being young. And the mother is trying to deal with it and her feelings about her daughter, because her daughter did something really horrible, horribly irresponsible, that resulted in a death. So contemporary fiction will give you these really interesting structural, technical characterization, kind of looking at the world a new way, and having something new to say about something that maybe hasn't really been looked at before. And I love getting to do those books. And then women's biography memoir, I just get so much out of that. Living somebody else's life for a week and just kind of sitting in their experience and what did they learn, and yeah.
And you mentioned romance being a big, how did you put it?
It's given me a lot of love.
Yes, and they love you,
Yeah.
definitely. You definitely have huge fan groups in the romance genre. Do you have a favorite subgenre within romance to perform?
Oh gosh. Well, it's fun every once in a while to tackle a romantic suspense.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of get things going there. I love things that have like wicked flirty humor, because when it's well written, it's just as much fun to perform as it is when you're out in life and things are flirty and bubbly, and there's good energy from it, from the humor and the flirtation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll also, I'm in the middle of a super angsty book right now where there's someone who lost track of someone, thought that had kind of given them up for lost, started a new life, new relationship, and they're just about to move forward in that new relationship, and the guy from the past isn't gone. He's looking for her, and now she's got to decide between her future and her past, and feeling obligated to somebody who's carried a torch for her all this time that he's been gone. And it's just like, oh my gosh, what would I do if I were in that situation? So I like, it's sort of like love the one you're with. I love the book that I'm working on because it's the thing that I'm working through at the time.
Is there a genre that you have yet to narrate that you'd want to narrate?
Ooh. Is there? Oh wow. I've done like YA dystopian, but I have not done like a Handmaid's Tale, that kind of book that really goes right at, like a Margaret Atwood kind of a thing, Joyce Carol Oates kind of a story
Mm-hmm.
that is really thorny and prickly. There are a couple books that are not yet in audio that I know who has the rights to the text, and I don't know if they've just decided never to do it, but there are a couple of books that I kind of have my eye on, and every once in a while I'll just send a little note saying, hey, I love this book. It's backlist, but it's great,
Mm-hmm.
So
Let me know when you're ready to record it.
yeah. Yeah, there's one that's absolutely wicked that I would love to do, but we'll see.
Well, I'll keep my fingers crossed for you for that one.
Thanks.
So I want to talk a little bit about because recently we did have a royal wedding.
Yes.
The Royals trilogy from Emma Chase that you co-narrated with Shane East.
Mm-hmm.
How is that series for you to narrate? Because again, there's accents, there's these like a fairy tale stuff going on, royalty. I mean, I fell in love with the story, but it was because of the performance that you and Shane did that really made me like, ooh, I love it.
Aw. Yeah, I mean, who doesn't want to be the princess, the like commoner whisked away by the prince kind of thing. And the opening scene in the first book where she's just being real with him because she doesn't know him from Adam.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he likes about her. There are a lot of stories like that. Some are the person is literal royalty, like in that book, but in some, they have a status because of their family or their finances or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that they're not used to being told, to knock it off or whatever.
Yeah.
There's something involving pie. I remember there's something involving pie in the first one.
Yeah, she is the pie maker in the family because they own a business. And so,
But doesn't she pie him or something?
yeah, I
Or
think he did something stupid or said something, and she just got fed up and threw a pie at him. I was like, "Yes, you
yeah,
good girl." Um,
yeah,
well, a lot of times they write authors that write heroines that are, you know, quiet and demeanor, and it's just they don't stand up for themselves. That's I can't relate to. So when you have
no,
an author, well, it's just one of those where I'm like, stand up for yourself. You have self-worth. Let's go. And so when there's a character, a heroine that is smart, independent, and knows her worth, and we'll just throw the freaking pie at the guy because he's being an asshole. That's
yeah,
my kind of
yeah.
girl.
Ah.
and the way that you perform it too, it's like almost like watching a movie in front of you because of again your performance, your tones. It's almost like you're seeing that as I'm listening to it. So you definitely give life to the book as you're performing and the listeners are listening to it. So that was
I'm glad to hear that. I'm really glad to hear that. I try to picture myself in the situation and then move in it, if that makes sense. Like
yes.
if somebody does something that if it happened to you, you'd have to stop and think first before you can respond, then I try to let that land and then respond to it. But it's weird when I'm the one saying it to me, then I'm responding to myself. But like,
Yeah.
have fights with myself, punch myself out.
Yeah. That's not recommended. Not recommended. So with Getting Schooled, again by Emma Chase, it was co-narrated by Zachary Weber. Um, with you being a teacher, were you relating to any of the topics that were happening in the story?
Well, I wasn't a high school teacher,
Right.
although I was a high school musical director for 3 years. So I was sort of like the drama coach at a high school
Mm-hmm.
for 3 spring musical seasons. And I guess I could relate to it from that standpoint. I think Emma, I told her when I was prepping that book, I was like, the similarities between it's Callie, right?
Yes.
And me. It was just so uncanny. I would come across another thing and I would have to email her and be like, "Oh my gosh, you know, the second guy she kissed was like a football player, you know, like while she was in a play and the football player was in the audience and he was jealous of her stage kiss, and that's exactly what happened to me." It's like I literally in high school was dating a member of the football team in a play, had a stage kiss, football player boyfriend is sitting in the front row, and then started saying these little things about like, you know, criticizing the actor's kissing technique because obviously he doesn't know what he's doing, and you know, it was like a little insecurity there on his part or something.
Yeah. Well, Emma captured the essence of being the teenagers, but at the same time the teachers. So, and I didn't teach myself, but I ended up marrying a teacher. So I sometimes have, yeah.
Oh,
So I end up having to talk him off his cliff sometimes. Um,
uh,
yeah, and he's been teaching now for, gosh, I think it's been 18 or 19 years, and he does teach high school and
what
the
subject?
Spanish. So it's an elective.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So you have a mix of students that want to be there, some that get stuck put in there, and right now it's the end of the school year, so they're dying just to have it be over with. And I loved how Emma did not only the students, but even that moment of teachers that were like, oh, I'm so fed up with these freaking
Yeah,
kids.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and but then the hero is like, well, they need us and stuff, to the point where I was like, I think I want to have my husband listen to this book to get a little bit of a refresh and yes, I like what I'm doing. Because it's hard.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. Bless our teachers.
Hmm.
We can't pay them enough,
Yeah.
and we don't.
No, we don't. No, we don't. And I'm not just saying that because I'm married to one. I'm just saying that in reality, they don't, for what they have to deal with, and also working with our future. I would think that we would put a little bit more emphasis on that. But the two of you, Zachary and you, did a phenomenal job with that. And it was dual narrated. Have you guys done any duet narration?
No, we have not, because we're on the opposite coast from one another.
Yes.
So, and he is a hard one to catch up with. Even when we were both nominated for that Voice Arts Award last year, he was on the East Coast right around that time filming a movie. But
Mm-hmm.
that day he had to be like on location in Maryland, like out on a river or
Oh,
something.
no.
So he couldn't come to the awards thing to go up on stage and accept it with me, which sucked. But
Yeah.
I still haven't met him in person. I've never met the man in person. So,
Well, are there a lot of narrators that you've co-narrated with that you have yet to meet in person, or is that list getting
uh,
smaller and smaller lately?
let's see. I know Joe Arden,
Mm-hmm.
and I've met Joe Arden. I've met, certainly met Sebastian York, obviously, because we did Marriage Games in the same studio.
Mm-hmm.
And I am going to get to meet Shane East next week.
That's one of the reasons why I love the fact that audiobooks have become so popular and trending, is because now we get to have and to get to know you guys a little bit better and be able to have that. Oh, this is all of Andy's work or all of Zachary's work and things like that, versus just trying to figure out where to find you and just use Audible. Now you guys have websites and social media and you're sharing things, and you guys are going to conferences now too, some of you. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
excited about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, what upcoming appearances are you going to be at? I think you have a Polycon.
Yeah, I've got a Polycon already lined up for next year,
Mm-hmm.
and Joe Arden's gonna be at that, and Tanya Eby is gonna
Mm-hmm.
be at that, and Maxine Mitchell, Leah Langola I think is gonna be there, and there are a couple other narrators who are looking at possibly being, if not down in the conference area, because there's like a capacity limit for the people who are presenting.
Mm-hmm.
But you can still go up to, you can be in the hotel obviously and be
Mm-hmm.
hanging out. So it's a good time for us to hang out and get to know each other too. Like I gotta make sure I get my name right here. Savannah Peachwood.
Mm-hmm.
Savannah Peachwood was at a Polycon this year, and we got to go to one of my favorite restaurants near the hotel. which has tapas, and we hung out and had tapas and wine and got to know each other better. And that's always good, just because now I'm casting as well, and the better I know my colleagues, the better I'm able to give them opportunities when authors say, oh, who would be good for this?
Right.
So
because you own Lyric Audiobooks.
yeah, I do.
Yeah. And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, sure. I initially was just narrating through producers and through publishers, but as ACX and indie publishing started to gain momentum, I was finding myself producing more and more directly for authors. And initially it was just the things that I was narrating, I would also produce. But then it was like, oh, well, can you get this co-narrator? Well, do I have to, deal with them separately, or can I just go through you? And so I would say, well, I'll just coordinate everything, just go through me, and I'll handle all the keeping the trains running on time and deliver the finished audio. And then it went from there to, gosh, I'm not actually available to narrate in the time that you need your book to be done, but I know like the varsity team of romance narrators, so let's get you a great voice and get this book produced. And that turned into what it is now, which is a production company that produces award-winning audiobooks for indie authors.
Yes.
For best-selling indie authors, I might add.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we are very, very proud of our client roster and our narrator roster, and just super happy with how it's going right now. So.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that you and Joe Arden are going to be getting together in a couple of days for the Audi's Award, correct?
Oh, yeah. And Jill Bengtson is going to be attending the Audi Awards as well. So
yes,
we're going to sit there together and hold hands and go.
Yeah. So you guys were nominated for Best Romance for the book Cake, A Love Story.
Yeah.
I had been looking at that cover for a while. I was looking at the book for a while as well. And I had it on my mountain of to be read list. And it got bumped every once in a while. People were raving about it. It wasn't until it became an audiobook, though, that it skyrocketed. And the reviews were coming in. And then I was like, oh, well, Andy's narrating it, so that's cool. And I'm going, Joe Arden, where have I heard him before? And I'm going, it doesn't matter where I've heard him before, I'm buying it. And so fell in love with the series, and you are the consistent narrator, for all 4 books. And the male characters of between Joe and Zachary Weber are the two other. Yeah. So how did she told us that I think she wrote you and said, hi, I love you. How did that start?
Well, one of her reader fans, who's also a big audiobook fan, just told her, hey, when I read your book, I hear Andy's voice. And there is no greater compliment or honor to a narrator than to have a print reader say that. And then they say it to the author. And then, so the author found out how to get in touch with me. And she told me about her book, and that it was her first book, and that it was really starting to take off, and would I be interested in narrating it? And there was just something about the way she wrote her email that really caught me. It was somebody who's got this. She wasn't under or overplaying where she was at. She was just saying, "Here's where I'm at," and and this reader told me about you, and so I was hoping to talk to you. And there's just something about it that made me go, yeah, let's look at this book. Let's see what this is. And I very quickly saw that it was indeed this phenomenon that was beginning to gain momentum. And I was like, oh, this looks fun. Let's jump on this train and see where it goes. And so, yeah, it was really different. I see why people are drawn to her writing, her series, her characters, because these people are so fresh, and it's like she writes them like people
Yep.
They talk like people really talk, and I love the fact that it's an accounting major with a rock star. It's just like
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and you're right.
And, she gives it right back to him. She's smart. She's sweet. So.
Mm-hmm. It was one of the things that I really enjoyed listening to the books is the way the characters spoke to each other. The family dynamic, it's to the point where you're like, can you adopt me? And want to be part of
Yeah.
that family. But they
Yep.
went through a whole lot of, they went through hell. And to
Yeah.
come, through the tragedy that went through, which is kind of the catalyst for the book. And the stories for them to go through that and kind of see what they go through at the end, as well as how they, went through everything. The performance that you guys both did was emotional and funny, and there were quirky moments, and there was just these tragic moments of sad. I'm like, okay, I gotta put pause for a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, those kinds of stories where somebody has had or something happen to them that has damaged their ability to trust the world.
Mm-hmm.
Where they'll only go so far and then they protect themselves. I think a lot of us have something happen like that we could just sort of play it safe.
Mm-hmm.
And so those kinds of stories are always interesting to me. How does somebody learn to trust again? Learn to be vulnerable with somebody else and give and take a chance that they'll be hurt again.
Mm-hmm.
Frankly,
Yeah.
a lot of us have to deal with that. So, yeah.
I love that series, and I'm hoping that we get maybe one or two more characters with books, in the near future. But I know she's also working on something
Well,
else, so we'll see, right?
yeah. Yep. And if she wants, to keep working with me, I'm happy to keep working with her.
Cool. So
Yep.
you did bring up an individual by the name of Sebastian York, and
Yeah.
and
An individual.
yeah, right. Gosh, I'm trying to think. I think they call him like the audio unicorn or something like that because he's just so mysterious and everything. I got a chat with him last year. He's a wonderful, lovely gentleman with a wicked sense of humor. But you get asked a lot about him because you've co-narrated a lot of books with him.
Mm-hmm.
But you have fun with it. In the one or two of the groups that I'm in that you're also in, that they'll start talking about Sebastian, and you'll just pop in there and give him, a little, you know, ragging on or just complimenting and stuff like that. Is it fun for you to kind of be in that position a little bit, or, you know, because he does have his, he's not mysterious on purpose. He wants to keep his privacy, and so people are constantly asking about, what does he look like? Have you met him and stuff like that? Does it get
Yeah, but
tiring?
then they say like, but don't tell me.
Yeah.
It's so funny to me because this is like, but what does he really look like? But wait, don't tell me. I don't want to know. I think at this point we can't know, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's just like it's a settled thing. We're never
Mm-hmm.
going to know, So why would I not have fun with it?
Yeah.
Because to me, there's no decision to be made other than let me help you come to this realization.
It ain't gonna happen.
That you're not going to know, but that you don't want to know, and it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, he has.
So no, I don't mind at all. I love my personal relationship with him. I value it greatly. I would never do anything to damage it. I consider him a dear friend at this point, and so anything I can do to kind of, he doesn't do social media, so
Right.
I sort of, I'll sort of chime in every once in a while without speaking for him,
Mm-hmm.
because I would never want to do that either. I don't think that's cool.
No, yeah. When I spoke to him, we were talking about how he does not have any social media, and I was letting him know about how he has this huge fan base and how they just love and adore him, his voice, his performance, and he seemed like he didn't know how big it was and things like that. Do you screenshots thing, when people are making comments or they're raving about him and share that with him just for, shits and giggles, or, just to let him know, hey, they're talking about you again, or anything like that?
Not really, not really.
Okay.
Usually when we talk, we're talking shop, we're talking schedules, we're talking, it's time to work on this. What are you doing with this voice? I'm doing this. Um, yeah, I mean, I get kind of a kick out of it. He just really doesn't know, and he kind of doesn't want to hear too much about it because I
Mm-hmm.
think he doesn't know quite where to put that, what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
He's, like, I think recently the thing that I said that you might be referring to as far as like making jokes about it is like, somebody else asked that, like, does he know? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, he knows that we keep getting jobs. So that's the, that's the good news in there.
Yep, that is the good news we love. And you guys do a great job together. And I know that you mentioned that last year you won the award for the marriage games.
Hmm.
And then now you're going back again for another nomination. How is that from a professional level? How does that feel to be, nominated again and again?
Oh man. Well, it's not again and again yet to me. Um, like there's that part of the actor self that's like, it could all go away tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody will just email me and be like, it's like Mary Tyler Moore said that every time she was getting ready to do anything, she's in her dressing room, whether it was a movie set or TV or whatever, she always felt like this knock was going to come to her at her door, and it was going to be some stagehand saying, well, we found out that you really can't do this, so you have to go. She's like,
Mm-hmm.
it just never goes away. So I don't take any of this for granted. I appreciate every second of the cool phase that this is in, but I'm the daughter of a career risk manager in the insurance business, and his whole approach to life was, what would you do if? What if this happens? What if this happens? So, you know, I'm like happy in the moment and always like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. It's always important to kind of have that mindset and know that, live in the moment, figure out that you're enjoying what you're doing and things like that. So that's pretty cool. I'm eager
Yeah.
and excited for you as well as some of the other nominees, and I can't wait to find out what the results are and, you know, get to listen
Oh,
to
they
more
can't go
books.
wrong this year. Like, yeah, there's 5 really strong romance finalists this year.
Yeah.
And, they are friends of mine. So, like, how am I not going to be like super thrilled for a good friend who did a great book? Like,
Mm-hmm.
they, I get to go to the Audis as a finalist, wear the medallion, be in the room. My colleagues are wonderful. I love them like family. It's a beautiful evening. There's champagne, there's great food, everybody looks fantastic. And, if Cake wins, I'll be so proud and happy. But if we don't, I'll be so proud and happy. I'm like, I feel like we already won. There were so many romance releases
Mm-hmm.
that year. So it's, how is that not great? It's great.
So when you're not working, which I know it's rare, um, when you're not working in those moments, what do you do for fun?
Well, I like to travel and plan trips. That's my procrastination. And so, like, my Australia trip is not until September, but I already have my hotels lined up, and I already have, I'm like, what's the best place to eat in Melbourne?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I really love to travel and plan travel. I have a husband and 2 very busy teenage daughters, and so a lot of my free time is spent carpooling and attending sports things with them, and just putting my mom hat on. And I've learned how to keep score at swim meets, and I've learned how to, you know, so all that stuff. I have a dog that I love. We go for walks together. We go for long walks in the park. Yeah, he's one of those dogs that's at my knee as I'm walking through the house and just looking up at me like, you know, if any, no matter what happens in this world, as long as I have this dog, I'll be okay, because he just looks at me like I'm the best.
They are really good at that.
Especially when you have teenagers.
Yes, I have a
You
15-year
need
old.
that.
I do.
Oh, okay. So
I can relate.
virtual hugs, virtual
Yes,
hugs,
thank you.
virtual hugs.
I'm like,
You are enough.
yeah, I go, "Ah, at least you love me. And you don't roll your eyes at me when I say,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, we could go on.
hmm Yeah, we'll talk later over drinks. Um, but with having the booth at home, it's obvious that your children know the narrator. Do they know exactly what it is that you're narrating from a romance perspective? Do they know? Do they care? Are they like whatever?
That they're both in high school.
hmm
And so I don't really hide anything from them anymore. They don't come into my office and sit there reading. Although if they wanted to, it's a book,
Right.
Like, it's a book. Um, but it's really interesting. There was one day when my one daughter she came in like, "Are you done? Like, I need something." And I was just at the very, very end of a love story. And the very last page of a love story has that like zooming out, roll the credits, kind of grand, everything's wrapping up, put a bow on it kind of feeling.
hmm
And so, I motioned through the door of my booth, like, just sit down for a second, I'm going to finish this. And so I finished the book, and she was like, "Well, I could write that." And I said, "Go for it." And she's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Go write a book." And she just looked at me, and I was like, "No, really?" Like, and she's like, "Well, I mean, I could write a book like that." And I was like, "Yeah, but this person did,
hmm
it exists." Like, I really have learned so much about the author side of things, like watching them go through the creative process, even the pre-release anguish. Like, now the
hmm
book is in its final form. You can't change it. Once it's in the audiobook narrator's hands, you're really not changing it. This
hmm
is what it is. And it's being typeset and all this kind of stuff. And they're like in this pre-release, "Oh my God, all my other books were okay, but what if this one sucked?" And like, and, or they're really excited about it, but they can't, but it's not time to like talk about it yet because it's not out yet or whatever. So when my daughters say something like, "I could write a book like that," my response now is just like, "Okay, go try. I hope you do." But I don't think they will. I think they just want to, like, I mean, they might, but I think that's true of a lot of people. They're fine, like, passing judgment about something, but
Yeah.
they don't actually have the cojones to do
Yeah.
it. So,
And I see that with authors, but I also see sometimes I see little comments about, from the narrators. I'm like, well, I can just be a narrator and read and let people talk. I'm like, no, no. I have to edit the stuff that you and I are talking right now, and I'm going to be cringing the entire freaking time because of how I sound and how I should have done this instead of that. I would definitely want to do like school to be like an audiobook narrator. I'm not going to say, well, I can do it. I value all the stuff that you guys do. It's a lot. And I hear some of your bloopers too. You guys are hilarious on those. But it's not just one or two times. You have to do that a lot, and it takes practice. So it's
oh, I got the giggles so bad last night because, I got to find the sentence. It's in the script that I'm working on right now. Sometimes if you just switch a pronoun, um, it, it okay. No, there's something about, okay, it has to do with the word caress. So I have to find the word caress. Okay, here we go. So what I said, so you just picture this and you're like, wait, what? He guides my head onto his chest. And what I said was, he guides my head onto his chest and caresses his back. His back. I said he caresses his back. And I'm like, that's not sexy. Oh, wait, because it's supposed to be he guides my head onto his chest and caresses my back.
Yeah.
Now that makes sense. But
Yes.
he guides my head onto his chest and caresses his back. Like, does he have an itch? Like,
yeah.
And so the next like 2 or 3 takes, I couldn't like finish because I had to stop because I was getting the giggles.
Yeah.
picturing that.
Yeah.
And then there was something today where like she's sitting on the couch and he's sitting on a coffee table, and all I could picture was like a glass coffee table that broke.
Oh my.
Like, don't think about that. Why are you thinking about that? Don't think about that.
Funny enough, though, as soon as you said, coffee table, he was sitting on, I'm going, what if he's sitting on a glass one and he falls?
See?
See? You're not the only one, so that's good. But, it's interesting where your mind goes when it comes down to
Yeah,
some of this
that's when I
stuff.
know I need to like take a break. Time to go for a walk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know that when I've read some stuff and I'm reading the ebook and I'm going, I repeat myself in the same line or I'm going, this does not make sense to me. That means like Vivi is really tired. She needs to put the Kindle down and either go to sleep because it is 4:00 in the morning. Or I've been on the computer for too long. So definitely needing a break. Yeah. So let's have a little bit of fun and do a little bit of getting to know you by doing a speed round questions. Basically, I'm going to ask you.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Don't worry. I'm not going to ask you to choose between your two kids. I'm not going to do that to you. But it'll be quick and painless, I swear.
Okay.
Okay, ready? All right.
Mm-hmm.
Vanilla or chocolate?
Vanilla.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Winter or summer?
Summer.
West Coast or East Coast?
West Coast.
Pie or cake?
Cake.
Texting or talking?
Talking.
Marvel or DC?
Hanna-Barbera.
Oh.
Warner Brothers. Like, neither. I'm not a comic book lady.
Got it. TVs or movies?
Probably TV.
Mm-hmm. Facebook or Twitter?
Facebook.
Paperbacks or digital?
Paperbacks.
Classic rock or old school hip hop?
Classic rock.
All right. Cats or dogs?
Dogs. Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, that was it. It was painless. See?
Okay.
You did good. Okay. I know everybody's always gets like freaked out. I'm like, what are you gonna ask me? Don't ask me what my favorite author or narrator. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna do that to you. That's unprofessional, and I'm not that mean. Thank you, Andy, so much for joining us today and being part of Audiobook Lovin. I love chatting with you always.
Oh yeah, I can't wait to see you at the next thing where our paths cross IRL.
Yes. I'm actually thinking of like when I purposely saw the lineup for a Polycon next year. I'm like, I think I'm going to go just to see the narrators. So.
Oh, you gotta.
Yeah, I might go just for you guys, but that's because I love you, so I'll do that.
If you do, we're going to Haleo.
Okay, got it. Perfect. See, now I have a plan. Now I have a reason to do it. Like Andy's expecting me to go. I have to go.
Yeah.
See if that works for my husband. What we'll do for the post, everything of your information will be within the post, so listeners and readers can stalk you or literally find you if they haven't heard of your work before. And we'll include some of the clips from some of your work as well, so they can have all in one spot. So thank you.
Thank you so much for everything that you do for all of us.
Anytime, you guys rock. So it's easy thing for me to do.
Okay.
Audiobook Lovin hopes you've enjoyed this program.